Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Well, I have here an interesting article that actually confirms, or I don't know if it confirms, but I would say confirm because it fits my way of interpreting certain kind of events. But the problem is this comes from a Russian media outlet, so you might say, oh my god, Emil, you are aligned with those guys. Well, I don't know if, let's say, Stalin said something right and I said something of the same nature regarding the same event. It doesn't mean that I agree with Stalin. It's just that we came or we reached the same conclusion given certain kind of evidence. So I don't care if, let's say, Stalin said human beings are bad and I said the same thing. It doesn't mean that I spoke with Stalin and I looked at him and said, hey Stalin, I think you're right about that one. No, it's just where maybe we reached the same conclusion based on the evidence we have in our lives. And in this case, we have a certain kind of statements made by this left hand is not doing anything here, okay? Just so you know, it's just resting, not on it, on my foot, right here. So, or I should like Putin, hold it here and talk like this, you know, so I can, when I don't like something. So, we have here Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He's a weasel. And we have here a U.S., how do you call this, expert calling him a clown. What a coincidence. He's a clown like his fellow clown in Ukraine right now. And we find interesting things that we could have, and not could have, we figured them out before this guy making these statements. So, this article comes from Sputnik. It is from 14 minutes ago. So, it is from the 23rd of November today, 2022. Johnson admits, and I'm quoting, sound economic reasons for wanting Ukraine to surrender. Well, we all knew that. They all looked at their interests first and then Ukraine. Ukraine was just a place where a certain kind of war between Russia or United States and Russia occurs. Boris Johnson led the charge on arming Ukraine, both before and during Moscow's military operation, and imposing sanctions and embargoes on Russian exports that prompted a euro-wide inflationary crisis, according to Sputnik, so cut the crap. Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has revealed that European leaders hoped for a quick Russian victory in Ukraine. That's exactly what I said. They hope something happens, but they're fast, so they don't have to impose sanctions, send military, and get in trouble with the Russians. In a TV interview on Tuesday night with a US channel, Johnson also conceded that there were, quote-unquote, sound economic reasons for Germany wanting Kiev to swiftly agree to a peace deal with Moscow, but that he couldn't support it. So Germany wanted nothing to happen over there, and they wanted everything to go fast so their economy is not affected as it is. But the Brits, who are in the little hands of the Americans, said, no, we like your economy going down the tubes, and the Americans, our leaders, taking over. Why? Because look what's going on right now. American industry, big companies are thinking about relocating to the United States of America because of cheap gas price over there and taxes because of that inflation whatever act they try to implement right now, which would create a great environment for the businesses that are in Europe because of their leaders and sanctions. So, yes, of course, and Great Britain was just in this case, Johnson was just a tool who helped, screw the German economy. Remember, sorry for my British friends, but I have to tell you something I learned a long time ago by some experts. And they said this, I don't know how many freaking books I read on this. One of England's main goals in the European continent was they never wanted a strong country having the influence over the European territory. They wanted the Europeans to be always fighting so they can dominate left and right. So whenever you have France or you have Spain, they did something. When you had, let's say, France, they did something. When they had Germany, they did something. They always wanted to do that, and you don't blame them. I mean, it's not like friends. It's cutthroat life. Even now, when they say, well, we're allies, there's no allies. We're allies in looting or robbing someone else. Once that process is ending, we look at one another and say, okay, you got loot, I need that one. And the guy looks at you, hey, you got loot, I need that one. So that's what are you going to do? You're going to ally with others to get the other guy's loot. Or they say, okay, I'm not going to punch you in the face right now. You're kind of strong, I'm strong, I don't want to get hurt. You don't want to get hurt, so let's loot him. Let's go. So that's how alliances are formed. It was Johnson, backed by Washington, who persuaded Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to break off peace talks with Russia just a month into the conflict. Remember when it showed up in Turkey and they agreed to certain things, and then when the next day Johnson flew from London to Kiev and told Zelensky, what are you talking about? And he said, okay, my bad. Okay, I'll do whatever you say. So, to break off peace talks with Russia just a month into the conflict, when they were on the verge of a breakthrough during a visit to Kiev in late March. But a US military analyst has told Sputnik that Johnson miscalculated by encouraging the clash with Russia. And I'm quoting, the Germans, for all sorts of sound economic reasons, really didn't want it, Johnson told the broadcaster. And I'm quoting again, I'll tell you a terrible thing. The German view was at one stage that if it were going to happen, the war, which would be a disaster, it would be better for the whole thing to be over quickly and for Ukraine to fold. End quote. I couldn't support that. I thought that it was a disastrous way of looking at it. But I can understand why they thought and felt as they did. Because of their fucking people. And their economy will collapse, you idiot. But you didn't care about your people. Look how much is your energy cost in your country. How your fellow citizens or subjects are paying how much. Johnson was also among the most strident voices for sanctions and embargoes on imports of Russian fuels, food and fertilizers, which prompted the inflationary crisis that is set to tip most of Europe into recession. His government was also one of the biggest providers of military assistance to Ukraine before and after the launch of Russia's military operation on February 24th, which Moscow says preempted a Ukrainian offensive on the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic it formally recognized days earlier. Meanwhile, Bojo also accused French President Emmanuel Macron of being too optimistic of a diplomatic solution, even as, and I'm quoting, we could see the Russian battalion tactical groups amassing. Well, he thought, but he didn't know the Americans wanted what we have now. And I'm quoting, be in no doubt that the French were in denial right up until the last moment, the politician claimed. They weren't denied. He didn't want a war, but other people decided it should be war, and you played along because you had to. You are just a house servant, and you don't want to be the plantation guy who cuts the sugar cane like everybody else. So that you still like your position because you're up a notch from the bottom feeders, but you're a bottom feeder as well. But you like your position. You're a house servant. You're not a plantation slave. Now, Scott Bennett, a former U.S. Army psychological warfare officer, told Sputnik that Johnson has always harbored delusions of being another Winston Churchill. I think so. Churchill was a former military commander and diplomat, while Boris Johnson is a clown in search of a circus. He said. Johnson has miscalculated regarding Ukraine and Russia and foolishly expected the Russian government to allow NATO and the US and Britain to launch an invasion into the Donbas region in a final extermination of the Russian-speaking people, who had rejected the puppet government in Kiev installed by the United States in 2014, Bennett said. That's a good summary of all you need to know. So, and then it talks the same. Bennett says here that the German people are increasingly viewing the United States as a slave master rather than a friend and ally, and this will most likely lead to violent political and social unrest, if not revolution, in Germany over the next 6 months, Bennett said. Bennett, you're on the same page with me. Everything you say, I said. So, thank you very much for that. Anyway, so I think that's accurate. And that's what the Russians are hoping, that things happen in Europe because their lifestyle is going to go down, the cost of living goes up, inflation goes up, and then they will say, what the fuck, we didn't come on this planet for having this situation with Ukraine that you guys decided to get us into, and now we're the ones that they're hurt. Why? I know that is a little principle. If someone is in need of help and you try to help, don't cause more harm. So the same, if you don't know what you're talking about, don't cause more harm while trying to help. Just stay out of it. The same thing with Ukraine. Did you think that the Americans and all these, the Western countries, these weasels, created less harm by trying to help Ukraine, or caused more harm? I think it caused 10 times more harm. Then I said 10 times because I can say 50 times and I can say 5 times. I don't have a study, that's why. But from my assessment, I think it's more. Why? Because everything would have been done and finished in March. You like it or not, but it would have been died, and that portion go to Russia with the Russians, and that was theirs at one point, not killed anymore by the Ukrainian tanks, and that would be it. Suffering. Well, we lost a territory that was given to us at one point, right? That would have been the loss. But look what caused by this. And then you say, no, Ukraine, Russia would have gone further. Really? How far? Get whole Europe? No, I don't think so. You know why? Because I'm going to give you my scenario. Jesus Christ would have had his second coming and say, stop, guys, shalom, no, let's make peace, let's go to the judgment day. I think that's what would have happened. Okay, so your scenario versus my scenario. Your scenario is based on nothing. My scenario is based on nothing. So they have equal value, 0. So in this case, they, by supporting that, created so much pain in Ukraine, the first one, and in the Europe and the global. All this help. Why? Because the Russians will invade, and Russians, no, everything didn't even have to go to war. The whole thing would have been done with the Minsk agreements. But again, you got some people that decided, no, we have to go through this. And that's where we are. So trying to do good, you did much, much more damage, destruction, pain, and everything that we know right now. You can blame the Russians? Yeah, you can blame them to a certain extent. Can you blame the Americans? Yeah, I think you can blame them. You can blame the Europeans? Yeah, I mean, they all have part of something in all this, more or less. All this could have been stopped even without the coup d'etat organized by traitors in Ukraine, because that's how you're called when you conspire and you're helped by outside services to overthrow a legitimate democratically elected government in Ukraine, Yanukovych, in 2014. Those are traitors. And then when they toppled the government, they were immediately recognized by the same sponsors. And that triggered, not all of it, because all of it was triggered with a NATO expansion. That triggered, it was like a ticking bomb. Tick, 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 tick. And that's where it got. And then it was the last, straw that broke the camel's back. Anyway, so Johnson is a clown, and he played his role. He did A-OK for the guys who wanted him. Now they got this guy Maharishi. We'll see how that's going to play out. If he's going to step sideways from the direction he's supposed to, he's going to be immediately, we're going to find out he's watched kids porn or something, and then he's going to be out. You'll see. They will find something. Or I don't know, he doesn't have 2 balls. He's got a ball and a half, and that's unacceptable as the prime minister. They will find something. Don't worry about it. So yeah, and Germany, of course, nobody wanted to be fucked up economically, especially Germany. So yeah, and the French, they tried to talk, but the order was from way up high, above, so they couldn't fight it. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.